Welcome to our video on Monster Hunter World. With the game announcing its final updates, I thought that now might be the best time to take a look at all the monsters the game offers, and rating them on a scale of 1 to 10. This is a personal rating scale largely determined by fun factor. If a monster was memorable or just plain cool, then it's gonna get a good rating. It's not really an exact science here, but mostly an opinion piece. Before I get started too far, I should clarify that there are two monsters I cannot rate because I did not fight them. First up is the Behemoth, from the Final Fantasy crossover. I skipped that content and didn't really have a desire to go back and do it. Also, the Ancient Leshen. Again, kind of the same story. Before we get started proper, I have to apologize because some of these names I'm probably going to mispronounce. I'm doing my best, please don't hurt me. First up, we have the great Jagras, the first monster that you officially hunt in the game. He is the perfect introduction to Monster Hunter World. Not too difficult, but he can be intimidating to the first-time hunter. Honestly, I kind of like him. He's nothing amazing or anything, but he's your first fight. He's kind of fun, nothing special, but it's just like, hey, here's your guy. This is the first one. I'm gonna give him a solid 7 out of 10. That feels more generous than it should be, but I don't know. I just have a soft spot because he's the first guy. You gotta give him a little credit. Next up, you have Kulu Yaku, and honestly, this guy really just annoys me. He doesn't look very interesting, he doesn't do anything very interesting. He's really just annoying because he grabs eggs and rocks all the time, and he jumps a lot, and he likes to throw the rocks at you, and it's not really a fun fight. He's kind of just like this big dumb chicken, and if you took him out of the game, I honestly wouldn't care. I'm gonna give him 3 out of 10. And then you have the Phuket, and I actually find him kind of cool. He's interesting in a design perspective, he's got a very memorable tongue, he's sort of difficult to fight for a first timer, he's got all sorts of water attacks, he's not bad. In the grand scheme of things, he's not amazing, but I find him fun, and I'm gonna give him, I don't know, let's give him a solid 7. Next on the list is Barroth, who I can't help but compare to some of the other Monster Hunter games that I've fought him in, where he's a little bit beefier and more difficult. In this game, he's a little bit of a pushover. He's kind of good to grind early on if you want to grind early on without moving on ahead. But he's kind of just a very simple fight. There's nothing wrong with simple, but I don't find anything about him particularly memorable or satisfying. I think I want to give him a 5 out of 10. And then you have Gyros. I actually don't know how to say his name. We're just gonna call him Tadpole. He's interesting. He's got, he's a water monster. He has like a bunch of sludge everywhere. Nothing too difficult, but he's a little bit more memorable than Barroth. I'll give him that. Actually, I kind of like him. He's all right. I wouldn't put him on like my top monster list, but I think he deserves at least a 6 out of 10. Next we have Toby Kadachi. This guy is fun. He's difficult for the first time. He has a good design. He's like this little angry squirrel who has electricity, and it's a well-designed monster. His attack pattern can be challenging, but it's not annoying in any way. I gotta give him a 7. He's pretty good. Then you have Anjanath, who kind of, to me, answers the question of what would a T-Rex and a chicken look like if they crossbred. Perhaps that's being a little unfair to Anjanath. He's actually a pretty good monster. He hits pretty hard. He has an interesting attack pattern. He's nothing like amazing, but he can be one of the first like monsters that makes you step back and being like, well, maybe I should learn to defend myself a little better. I think I'm gonna give him, I want to say a 6 or a 7. I'll give him a 6 just because I don't find him particularly inspired in terms of design, and he's not like this amazingly fun monster. And then you've got the Wrathion, who along with Rathalos seems to be kind of the poster child to the series, and this fight can be definitely difficult for a first-time hunter. I always considered Wrathion and Rathalos the gateway monster of the series. Like this is the bouncer at the door that makes sure you really want to be a monster hunter. Grand scheme of things, the regular Wrathion, nothing special, especially when you could like put it next to some of the later variants that you hunt in the story and in the game. But you know, it's just the old standby. I'm gonna give it a solid 7 out of 10. Next up, you have Zitsy it's the flashy guy, the Zitsy Yaku. You know, he's a lot like the Kulu Yaku in terms of size and general body structure, but he does have an interesting gimmick of, you know, he flashes his little fins and can blind and stun you, and that's an interesting mechanic. It's not quite annoying like the eggs and stones that the Kulu Yaku throws at you. It can be annoying to be flashed and stunned all the time, but overall I find that fight a little bit more enjoyable than the egg guy. But in terms of design and just general like enjoyment, I can't really say that I like him that much. I'm gonna give him a 5 out of 10. And moving along, we have Puu Lumu, who I love. I don't know, I have a thing for bats. Bats are actually my favorite animal. Well, I kind of like otters too, but I'm gonna, for the sake of argument, we're gonna say that bats are my favorite animal in real life. And this guy is basically a bat, but you know, more adorable in a terrifying kind of way. Visually, I find him really striking because, you know, he has a slim regular form where he doesn't look anything like he's anything special, but then he sucks all the air in and he becomes this big old puffball, a big old windbag, and I love the way that he looks. Unfortunately, his fight is pretty bland. There's really nothing going on during the fight. He does have a lot of wind attacks, but none of them really hit for a particularly good amount of damage. He's just kind of an obstacle that you can take down pretty easily. So, you know, design-wise, I gotta give him all the credit because he's adorable and awesome. But in terms of gameplay, nothing great. Overall, let's give him a 7 out of 10. And next we have the great Gyros. I think he's supposed to be some kind of snake with legs. He's kind of small. He doesn't really do too much. You do fight him in the Rotten Vale, so you kind of have to deal with the natural environment sort of decay that affects your character as well. And he has some poison attacks. But I don't... He's not like this hugely over-designed character. He's kind of on the bottom end in terms of design and gameplay because he's nothing super terrifying and he doesn't offer much in terms of difficulty. I don't find him bad, but I'm just gonna give him a 5 because there's nothing really good about him either. And then we have Rattaban, who in my early days of Monster Hunter World was like my favorite guy to fight. I liked the way he looked a lot. I think I really took a shine to him because his armor that you got for fighting him was really cool. I thought it was like the coolest armor available mid-early game. And so he was like my favorite guy in the game for a long time. Unfortunately, I think my opinion of him kind of went down a bit over time, but he still kind of has this special place in my heart as for those early days. I love his spiky look and how that you can like actually like shave off the spikes the more that you attack him, and you know, he looks wimpy when the spikes are all off, but you know, then he can like dig under the ground and regrow new spikes, and that was a really cool thing to me. I wish that when Iceborne had come out, they made like a new variant of Rattaban that was like mightier and like had some kind of like new gimmick. Unfortunately, they didn't do that. I'm still gonna give him a 7 because, you know, I like him. I love him. He's nice. Then there's Legiana, who I don't really find all that special. Legiana is an ice monster, which is kind of cool in its own right. It's nothing about it strikes me as particularly fun or memorable. It's just a thing with wings that hits you with ice. I like its name, Legiana. That's kind of a cool name. That's really all I can say about it. It's I'll give it a 5. And up next is Garan, who I like to call Clifford the Big Red Dog. I'm gonna be honest, this guy challenged the hell out of me when I started Monster Hunter World. His attack pattern was insane, he seemed really fast. The bleeding damage that he can cause is just like, he was overwhelming for a good amount of time when I started. Which is funny because, you know, the more you progress in the game, some monsters that challenge you early on become jokes. And he was like the prime example of that because he challenged me so much when I was a beginner. But then, you know, coming back to him, he was such a pushover. I could obliterate him in seconds, and his attack pattern didn't seem as insane as I remembered. But he's fun. I like his design. You know, he's a big red dog. He's fast. He keeps you on your toes. And, you know, when you get into higher difficulties and fight him again, he can still be a guy that you have to pay attention to. Not like he's not this huge monster that terrorizes you, but he's definitely one of the better ones, I would say. So I'm gonna give him, let's give him a 7. So we are approaching the 15-minute mark, and I kind of want to end part 1 there, and we'll be starting up part 2 soon with more monsters and, you know, eventually doing them all. I hope you enjoyed it so far. If you did, find that when it's produced, probably by the time you've watched this. Otherwise, it's been great, and I hope you enjoyed. Thank you.